Oh, hi, Matt. This is Danny Shine from Spiritual Entertainment Limited. I think we spoke.
Yes.
We spoke, yeah. Firstly, I have a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
Just wanted to firstly, did you find out whether or not whether Lockheed Martin wrote the code?
Somebody was getting back to you on that. If they hadn't, I shall chase that up for you.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, a colleague was meant to be getting back to you. Let me just make a note of that. Okay, you carry on.
Okay.
Take some notes.
So, firstly, as I said, my questions, which are going to be quite challenging, are not just from me. In fact, some of them are not from me. They're on behalf of many people who I'm speaking to about the census and some of their questions and concerns. I'd like to ask you: are you going to answer me the same way that you would down the pub if we were to have a pint together, or are you going to be towing the party line?
Well, hopefully that would be the same.
Right.
But obviously, I'm answering on behalf of ONS rather than personally.
Right. So then it might not be the same then.
Well, ask me the questions and I'll judge.
Okay. Let's start with the beginning. I received an envelope in the post which was addressed to the occupier.
Yes.
And there is nobody by that name at this property. Okay. And you have to understand that although I'm asking you challenging questions, don't take this personally.
No, don't worry.
You know, I come from a certain way of looking at things, and so anyway, yes. Yeah, so it's addressed to the occupier. There's nobody here by the name of the occupier. As far as I'm concerned, do I have to legally? Am I obliged to open a letter that's addressed to me, or even more so, that's addressed to the occupier? Because I'm not the occupier. I'm Danny.
Okay, but you do occupy the property.
Well, that's open for discussion. You know, the word occupier, like all words, is open for debate. Okay, so but besides that, leave that out for the moment. Is there a legal requirement for me to open my mail?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up for you. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure on the legalities of opening mail.
Right, especially if it's not actually addressed to my own name, because you see, the occupier, for example, one of the things that I'm considering doing is to give over my house to somebody else to occupy on the 27th of March, and then they'll be the occupier, and they can answer the questions.
Yes.
So legally, technically, that might be a way of approaching this, because...
But where would you be staying then?
I'm staying somewhere else.
Well, you'd have to be registered in that other property.
Well, I'll be staying... Well, I'm actually staying in a hotel on that night.
Okay, well, you'd be registered at the hotel then?
Right, so the hotel are going to register... They're going to register me, are they?
They will have to put down a list of all the number of people staying there, yeah.
So you're telling me the hotel are going to have to put the names and dates of birth of everybody that's staying at their hotel on that day? Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying is, unless people count as a resident of a hotel if they're planning on staying or have been staying for 6 months or more. Obviously, I assume you're not going to stay in the hotel for 6 months.
No, just that night.
Okay. Well, then the hotel manager would then have to put a number down of visitors who are staying for that night.
Yes.
They don't need to put down their names and addresses, just the number of people there.
Right. Okay, fine. Well, that's no problem.
Well, if you return to your address within 6 months, we would still expect you to complete your census questionnaire at your address.
No, I know what you would expect, but I'm saying it's written to the occupier. So as far as I'm concerned, I can give over the occupancy of my house and then have it being filled in by that person I give it to. Can I not?
Well, technically, the law states that the person who's responsible is the person who owns the property or is financially responsible for the property, which I assume would be you.
Well, that may be technically, but it's addressed to the occupier.
It is, but I think that's quite a commonly understood term.
Well, it may be commonly understood, but we're not talking about common understandings here. We're talking about law. You see, the thing is, Matt, that we teach... I don't know if you have children. Do you have children?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Excellent. So I'm sure that you'd agree with me that we try and teach our children to avoid bullying, to desist from bullying, and when they want things, to ask nicely for them and
yes.
politely and not threaten.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people are concerned about, including myself, about this, is that this census is asking and threatening us to fill it in. And that's where I come in and I say, or they'll come in and people would say, no way, I'm not going to be threatened to fill in information. That is That's not what we teach our children, is it?
No, I totally agree with you. And the main message that I hope's getting across, and possibly not so much in your case and when with your friends, is not so much the threat of the fine, but the benefits that the census will provide. I mean, if we didn't have the threat of the fine, do you think people would be more willing to complete the census?
Well, I don't know, but certainly many people I know would be more willing to complete the census because there's something a bit let's leave that alone. I mean, we can discuss. I've already expressed that. Okay. Now, the next question I have is, it says on the census that let me just get the wording out. Hold on a second. It says the information is kept confidential for 100 years.
Yes.
Yeah. How can it possibly write that in any seriousness? I laughed when I saw that because the people responsible for keeping it confidential in, let's say, 80 years' time probably haven't even been born yet.
Well, current government policy is that it will be kept confidential for 100 years. The 1921 census, for instance, we haven't released. And despite lots of campaigns to get that information released, that's still under lock and key.
Right.
And won't be released until, 2022 or whenever it is.
Right, got you. Okay, now let's go to the declaration. The declaration says, this questionnaire has been completed to the best of my knowledge and belief.
Yes.
If it's my belief that it is immoral to fill in the questionnaire because it's being because the government has awarded this contract to Lockheed Martin, so then in that case, surely the best thing I could do if I was going to complete the questionnaire to the best of my belief is not to complete it.
Right. Well, it's a notion I think you would have to test in court, and I'm not sure how much of a defence that would prove. I understand what you're saying. I mean, the law still says you've got to do it. The declaration on the front is there to kind of help people, and actually there's nothing in the law that says you actually have to sign it on the front. But that's there more to kind of help people and so that people feel they're doing something official and moving along.
Oh, so you don't have to sign that?
Gravitas to what they're doing.
So you don't have to sign that?
You don't have to sign that, no.
Right. Okay. And so what is then... the other thing is, you see, the way I read it is that... because in the English language is so, of course, so ambiguous, I read it like this. To the best of my knowledge and belief, this questionnaire has been completed. That's how I read it. Okay. In which case, I can complete it in any way I wish, including in a comedic way. Okay. Is that okay?
Well, no, because the law states that you can't provide false information.
No, you can't provide false information, but you can provide funny information.
Well, if the details of your life, your identity, and your job are funny, then yes, they would be the correct information, but that's not always the case.
Right. Okay. Well, it depends what you mean by true and false, doesn't it? Because again, these are very, very infinitely large subjects that philosophers have discussed for many years. Yes. So now coming to the questions themselves, if I feel like it's like, for example, here's another question. Is it against the law to use language to be considered, I don't know what you call it, bad language? So for example, a friend of mine, he told me that when it gets to the bit of who's going to be staying at your house, he's thinking of putting "mind your own fucking business." Would that be against the law?
It's not against the law, no.
No.
I suppose technically it's not true information, but I think we'd probably have bigger fish to fry than to go through every single questionnaire and follow up every single person. But there is a possibility that he could get a knock on the door to explain and to get a true answer for that question.
Right, he could get a knock on the door. Right, got it. But there's nothing illegal about writing that kind of response.
Well, unless it was considered as false information. If there was somebody staying at his house, then he should register who they are.
Well, that's not false information. That's just saying mind your own business.
But he's not giving the correct information. Therefore, surely it would be false information.
Well, it's not any information. If he was to say, for example, Bob Smith was at my house when he wasn't, then...
That would be false information as well.
That would be false information.
Yeah.
Yeah?
But if there is somebody staying at his house,
yeah,
and he doesn't give that information,
yeah,
then he's giving a false return. Because the information he's providing is not correct, therefore it must be false.
Well, it's not correct. It's no information. No information is not false information, is it?
Well, again, I think this is something that would have to be...
It's saying mind your own business. I'm not prepared to answer that question. Mind your own business.
Well, okay, I mean, the law does say that you have to answer that question.
Well, of course, that's what you say the law says. The law, the law is actually written, as you know. I mean, I don't know if you are familiar with the actual wording of the law.
I am indeed.
Yeah. So I think it might be a slight myth, as with most law, that the law says you've got to answer that information. It's not quite true. Firstly, of course, you'd have to agree that the law doesn't say what you have to do, because you don't have to do anything. That's an illusion. I can choose to do whatever I want to do, can't I?
Well, not if the law states that you can't.
No, that's not true. The law can state whatever it likes. I can choose to fill in the census or not fill in the census, and then I will suffer, supposedly, the consequences.
Okay, I'm with you. So what you're saying is, if the law states you do something, it's your choice not to do it.
Correct.
You then have to accept the penalty that may be handed down to you for breaking that law. Okay, I'm with you. Yeah.
Are you aware, by the way, of how many people didn't fill in the census last time, and how many of them were prosecuted?
There weren't very many prosecutions, but that was down to all sorts of issues, specifically around foot and mouth and getting around and identifying correct people.
Right. So you think there might be more this time? Is that
a lot of the a lot of the cases were deemed rather unfair if we targeted some parts of the country where there hadn't been foot and mouth and not targeting other parts. I mean, that's just one example of things that were different. But yes, there were very few last time. I agree.
Yeah, great. Okay, just one thing back to Lockheed Martin.
Yep.
Lockheed Martin Lockheed Martin have in the past, as far as I understand it, been accused of lots of very questionable behaviour, corrupt behaviour.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that in relationship to them getting the contract?
Well, I mean, I'm aware of a lot of the accusations. I personally haven't looked into. I know they're an arms company. I don't know a lot of the stuff that's going on about links with CIA and interrogation things. I'm not aware if that's true or not. Going through some of the internet sites and answering a lot of letters, I see some very weird and wonderful accusations thrown their way. So I'm not sure of what's true, what's not. It wasn't me or anything I'm involved with that gave the contract, so I'm not quite sure how that worked. That's kind of above my pay scale. So I'm kind of in the idea that they're what we've got. They've offered the best tender. They're giving the best value for money. That's what we've got. That's what we're going with. Right.
And so morals don't come into it?
Well, I don't know how it was judged, and it wasn't me that judged it.
Right.
So, my views on whether or not they should have it are a bit academic, really.
Right. Got it. Okay, thank you very much for the time being. I might be back to you. Thank you. You've been extremely willing to help out. I appreciate it.
No problem. Oh, by the way, you're writing the code. Have I got an email address for you? I'm not sure I have.